Hi, I'm Kurt from Kurt's Auto, and the other day I put a short out about the wrong way to put a fuel pump in, and the comment section blew up with everybody telling me that's how they did it and how it's a great idea to just cut a hole through the floor of the car, and working at a dealership, this is how you made book time. So I wanted to come through and explain myself a little bit better. When I said this is the wrong way to put a fuel pump in, I meant it. It's the wrong way to do it. Cutting a hole through the bottom of the car is absolutely the wrong way, especially when the brand new part you're planning to install has to be cut and damaged and then put back together incorrectly with hoses. And the reason I say incorrectly, because when you put a hose onto a tube, that tube has a nub that locks that hose on. When you just cut the metal and put a clamp in a hose, you don't have that same connection. Now, this was in a carbureted application, so there is no fuel pump. So this was causing a suction. And when this failed, with the cracks in it, it was obviously sucking air, not giving the engine fuel. I'll talk about that more in a minute. So the first reason why you don't want to cut a hole through the floor of the car, I'm going to show you. This vehicle is what they call a unibody. There is no frame. The frame is actually welded into the car. As you can see, the frame is pretty rusty on this car. I purchased this car for parts because I needed a bunch of different things off of it. When I found this, as you can see, they've hacked a large hole, and these ridges that are in this metal, these are considered structure. So the area that carries the weight of the gas and has the differential and the shock mounts and the coil springs and everything else connected to it has a large hole that no longer has any structure holding the vehicle together. So, in my opinion, you've compromised the integrity of the floor pan, which in turn, and the integrity of the structure of the car. So that's the structural reason not to do it. Now, for the next reason, I would have to say liability. Let's say it's 4th of July, you got your window rolled down and you go out, and next thing you know, your car's engulfed in flames. Somebody shot a bottle rocket and went inside your car and your car caught fire. Burned to the ground, there's nothing left of it. Your insurance company says, hey, we're gonna call in fire inspector. Fire inspector comes and looks at the shell of the car, completely gutted with no interior, and finds a big gaping hole cut through the floor of the car. Your shop is liable. If I was a fire inspector and I saw that, it would be very easy for me to convince a jury that you're at fault for having this car start on fire. So for fire reason number 2, let's say this is actually a fuel injected unit where you've replaced the steel with rubber hose, which I can show you on my other Firebird. Somebody did it without fuel injection hose and it's leaking fuel, and your fuel system develops a leak, manages to catch the car on fire, the car burns to the ground. Who's liable? The manufacturer of the part that you cut in half, or you for cutting it in half? I feel you're liable. So, for those reasons alone, besides the fact that it's definitely the wrong way to do it, is why I would never cut a hole in somebody's floor of their car. And that's coming from a shop perspective. Now, I know a lot of people in the comments said, but if you don't have a hoist and you don't have the money, and lots and lots of excuses, right? You know, you just can't do it. Well, you obviously have this option. You can go ahead and hack a hole through the floor of your car, but I would definitely say you're still fixing it incorrectly. This is not a correct repair, and I don't suggest that you do it. If you're trying to learn to fix cars, don't learn the wrong way. It's kind of like using compression fittings on brake lines. Sure, you can have a compression fitting, it'll fix your brake line, the brake probably won't leak. However, it's illegal. They're not DOT approved, so therefore, as a technician and a shop owner, they're not allowed on a car, and I would never put them there. So, I hope that covers the perspective of why I say that this is the incorrect way to put a fuel pump in. And it doesn't matter how long it lasted, if it lasted a week, if it lasted 5 years, A lot of people said that the cracks in the hoses, it had to have been done for a long time. This car's almost 40 years old. This car's been sitting for 5 years. These cracks may have happened after the car was already broken. However, I will tell you the story of this car and why it upset me to find this sending unit in this condition. When I went to buy it, the only thing I had a question on was the fuel system, because I could only see the passenger side of the car. It was up against a wall, so I couldn't see the filler neck. And looking underneath it, I couldn't really see much. It was buried in a garage covered in stuff because it had been sitting for 5 years, because you could see how dirty it was. Okay? So I didn't ask many questions because I could see the parts that were on it that I wanted. The subframe connectors, the differential, the axles. I wanted the interior plastic and the seats. But the other thing that I wanted was a good gas tank and a good sending unit. I own multiple Firebirds and Camaros, and I had a purpose for the gas tank in my 89 Firebird to replace one that's been sitting since 91, and the inside of the tank's covered in rust. So when I found the filler neck was cut off and the gas tank is ruined because the hose that's inside has to run up inside the filler neck, this gas tank is basically garbage. Also, the sending unit that I thought was new is actually garbage also, because it's been cut in half. So after stripping down the car and finding the damage to the sending unit that originally I had seen underneath the car looked like it was brand new, and was really excited that I was going to get that part, and finding the damage to the filler neck on the gas tank, I was kind of upset, because the story that I was given is that he was sucking through the original fuel pump in the tank and he didn't take the tank out of it. That was the assumption. When I saw the new sending unit, obviously somebody had. Now here's a thought. Obviously the fuel pump's removed. He told me a story that he thought he was sucking through the factory fuel pump. Maybe he didn't know this was done. Maybe he bought the car the same way and had no idea. The story he did tell me is that this car lasted for 100 miles after he had built it, and the engine melted down 2 cylinders because of a lean condition, because he couldn't get his fuel system right. When he was telling me the story, the first thing I thought was, well, if you're sucking fuel through a factory fuel pump, you're probably going to have problems. I don't know what caused the engine failure. All I know is he said the engine was built for 100 miles and it failed. If in fact this hose was on there before he built his engine and he put his engine into it and he was sucking through the line, because he had an inline fuel pump and a mechanical fuel pump, because I can show you that. Well, right here, there is still a mechanical pump. So I don't know where he had the inline electric, because he told me he also tried an inline electric pump, which maybe he did it after the fuel pump. I don't know. I have no idea about his setup. All I know is he told me that he melted his engine down under boost because of a lean condition that he had a problem with. And if there's a crack in a hose here and he was sucking air into the fuel line, that repair may have cost him his entire engine and be the reason that this car got scrapped after he stuck a ton of money into it. Anyway, to sum it up, hacking a hole through the floor of a car can be done, but in no way am I going to agree that that is the correct way to do it. Coming from a shop owner's perspective who has liability and concern for safety and possible lawsuits, I would never suggest cutting a hole through the floor of the car. But you do you, and again, if it's your only option because the car's junk and whatever excuse you want to give, go ahead and use that excuse. But to me, it's still not doing it right. So if you want to do it right, you take the gas tank out. And in fact, most manufacturers of the pumps want the gas tanks cleaned out anyway, especially on the older pumps that had brushes, because all of the brush material from the pump ends up in the bottom of the fuel tank. And so they kind of want that stuff cleaned out so it doesn't ruin the new pump. Just a thought. You can't really do that if you have a hole hacked through the floor of the car. And How much time does it possibly save to rip apart an interior of a nice car? Get if the car's junk and it doesn't have interior? I just don't get it. Let me know in the comments. Do you agree? Do you feel that this hurt the structural integrity of the vehicle and would possibly cause a liability problem if there ever was a fire? Or do you feel still that my concerns are invalid and this is a genius way to fix a car? Let me know.